Hello, my lovelies. I'm going to be going over the practice test for Unit 3. If you did not realize, there are actually two practice tests. There's two versions. So my version looks exactly like this. If yours has a star on it right here, you need to go open the other video because there are two different versions of this practice test. We want to make sure that you get the instruction from the correct one. Here we go. This might be a long video. Do not feel like you have to watch the whole thing. Scroll, fast forward, and just go to the parts that you need. If you do need the whole thing, maybe watch for a bit and pause, go get a snack, and come back and keep going, okay? But don't just watch it and zone out. The idea is to watch it, question yourself, and learn some new things, okay? Clarify those small misunderstandings. If you showed work, what you want to do is compare your work to my work and try to find out where is that small little thing that maybe you did incorrect. That way you can fix it. Okay, so I would also encourage you to have some paper, extra paper, and anything you got wrong, go ahead and rework it, okay? And that way you can compare the new one and the old one. This is how we study for math. We do problems over and over again. And we do them without knowing what the answers are already, okay, so that we can check and see what we need to get better at. Okay, number one, we are going to solve for b. So here's my b value. My goal is to get b completely by itself. So remember that we check for distribution, which we don't have any distribution. We check for if we have more of our letters on the other side, which I do not. I don't have any B's over here, so I don't need to bring them over here. Then we check for fractions, and this is where some students get a little confused because I do have a fraction here. But my fraction is right here with my letter, and there's another thing a little bit farther from my letter, and we want to get rid of that first. So the things that are closest to our letter, we want to do those things last. I'll say that one more time. The things that are closest to our letter, we're going to do those last. And we're going to try to get everything else out of the way so that we're only left with that last thing. So after we check all those things, we're doing PEMDAS backwards. So we're going to start with addition and subtraction. So on the side of my B, I see an addition sign. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides so that I can move it away from my letter. So plus 5 and minus 5 cancel. I have B divided by 2 still on this side, and 15 minus 5 is 10. So we look over here. Do we have any more addition or subtraction? We do not. So we move up to multiplication and division. Right now, our problem says B divided by 2. The opposite of divide is multiply. So we need to multiply whatever is in the denominator, this 2. So we're going to times by 2, times by 2. So times by 2 and divide by 2 cancel. So we just have our B. 2 times 10 is 20. All right, very good. So go through and kind of see what steps you did. Maybe you had no idea what to do at all. Worst case scenario, write PEMDAS on your paper and start working backwards. Okay? All right. Number 2. I am solving for n. There's my n. First thing we check for is distribution. You can handle distribution two different ways. I can go ahead and distribute and take this 8 times 6 and 8 times negative 3. Or, because distribution is multiplication, 8 times all of this, I could do the opposite of 8 times this, and I could divide by 8, and then I would never have to distribute in the first place. So you can divide by 8 and divide by 8. Remember, because distribution is multiplication. So instead of multiplying it, I'm going to divide it and bring it over here. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know what negative 264 divided by 8 is. So negative 264, whoops, I have a big old glare, divided by 8 is negative 33. So we have negative 33. And then this can come out of parentheses because it's no longer needing to be protected from this 8. Cool. Now, that's done. We don't have any fractions left. We can start with our PEMDAS. So do you see addition or subtraction? That can be taken care of. I see a minus 3. So the opposite of minus is to add 3. So minus 3 and plus 3 cancel. I have 6n equals. Now, negative 33 plus 3 is, terrible glare is what that is, negative 30. I'm going to go turn that light off here in just a second. All right, last step, multiply or divide. When this 6 is touching this n, touching is timesing. So just like this 8 was touching that parentheses, touching is timesing. Timesing is multiplying. The opposite of multiply is to divide. So we divide. All right, negative 30 divided by 6 is negative 5. Let me go turn this light off. All right, that's better. Here we go. Okay, if you wanted to see that done a different way, I can show you that as well. So, if you wanted to go ahead and distribute that, again, if you don't need to watch this, fast forward. Like, you do not have to watch me do this twice. But for anybody who wants to see it, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I could have done this by distributing first. Okay, I could have taken 8 times 6n, which is 48n, and I could take 8 times negative 3, which is negative 24, equals negative 264. Okay, I can do that. That's totally fine, totally acceptable. The next thing I would do is look for addition and subtraction. So I see subtract 24, so I'm going to add 24. So I have 48n equals negative 264 plus 24, negative 240. Then I divide by 48, because now it says 48 times n, so I'm going to divide that, and n equals negative 240 divided by 48 is negative 5. So you get the same answer either way. So if you don't like dividing by this 8 right here, well then don't. Go ahead and distribute it, and you'll end up dividing later on, so no big deal. Okay, so don't freak out. If you don't like the way I did it first, I'll show you the second way. All right. 3. All right, 3 is very similar to 1. Because I've got a little fraction with my letter, I've got an add or subtract sign with another term equal to a constant or a whole number. So we're going to kind of do it similarly to the way we did number 1. So if number 1 was a little rough, watch again. This is very similar. All right, I'm solving for A. Here's my A. I check for distribution. I have no distribution. I check to see if I have A's on this side and A's on this side. I do not, so I don't need to worry about that. I check for a fraction. I do have a fraction, but remember this fraction is right here with my letter, and there's a whole nother thing away from my letter that I could do first, and then do that fraction second. So in this case, we're not going to take care of that fraction just yet. So we're going to go to PEMDAS. Starting with addition or subtraction, I see a minus 12d, and the opposite of minus is to add 12d. Okay, minus 12d and add 12d cancel. I'm left with 4 over 3a equals 12d plus 8. Hey, miss, why didn't that become 20d? 12 plus 8 is 20. because 8 does not have a d on it. So they are not like terms, so I have to write them separately. Okay, now we have a fraction. That's multiply and divide, kind of. So I'm going to get rid of my denominator first, the 3. So this says 4 divide by 3. So I'm going to get rid of the divide by 3 first. So the opposite of divide by 3 is to times by 3. Okay. So times by 3 and divide by 3 are gone. So I have 4 times a left over. Now, just like with normal distribution, this is a 3 times 2 different terms. So I have to go ahead and do both of those. So 12 times 3 is 36d, and 12 times 8 is 24. Our last step is to get rid of this multiply by 4. So the opposite of multiply by 4 is to divide by 4. Remember, you have to divide all the way across. Just like we had to multiply everything, we also have to divide everything. So a equals 36 divided by 4 is 9. If you don't know that, type it in your calculator. 24 divided by 4 is 6. Okay. So whenever you have this tiny fraction right next to your letter, go ahead and do that fraction at the end. So some people ask, Miss, when would I not do that? Let's say that it had been 4a minus 12d all over 3 equals 8. You see the difference? If it had looked like this and the whole thing is under a fraction, well, I got to do the fraction first because everything else in the top is stuck. I can do nothing until I get rid of that fraction. But that's not true here. I can move this because it's a free agent. Okay, right here it's trapped. So the time that I would do a fraction first is if it looked like this. Okay, so that's the difference. I want to say nod your head if you understand, but I can't see you, so nod your head. All right, here's the last of the really difficult ones. Solve for h. So this is actually a geometric formula that you will use next year, so be ready for that. That'll be fun. If we want to solve for h, let's start. We do not have any distribution. I do not have h's on both sides. Now, I do have a fraction, and I can get rid of this fraction first because this is a multiply, multiply, multiply. All of those are multiplied together. So this is one big chunk of a term. Like there's no add or subtract at all. Okay, so which means I go straight to that multiply divide stage. Okay, you see there's no addition or subtraction. So in this case, that fraction falls right here in the multiply divide stage. So it's actually going to be the first thing that we do because there is no addition or subtraction. Okay, so notice here we had addition or subtraction, so we tried that first and then the fraction. All right, so if I want to get rid of this 1 divided by 3, I need to multiply by 3. So a multiply by 3 and a divide by 3 cancel. So I have 1 times pi times r squared times h. Well, we know that 1 times anything is just that thing. So I actually don't need to write the 1. And then 3 times v, I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to have them touching. 3 touching v, because that's 3 times v. All right, so I need to get h by itself. So we always said that this is pi times r squared times h. So we are still in this multiply divide stage, right? There was no addition or subtraction at all, so we skipped that one. And we went straight to multiply and divide. So right now, these are all being multiplied times h. So the opposite of multiply is to divide. And I can divide all the things that are currently being multiplied. I can do them all at once. I don't have to do them separately. Okay, so pi divided by pi is 1. R squared divided by r squared is 1. 1 times h is h. And then this, I have no idea what that is because I don't know what any of these variables are. So we would leave it just like that. Okie dokes. So there is a process. When in doubt, go to PEMDAS. You have to remember things like grouping. Okay, this is a group, and it is stuck in this group until I get rid of this and I free them. So those are some of those things you have to remember from way back when you learned how to do order of operations. All right, let's move on. Identify the slope from the equation of the line. I want to remember that this is in y-intercept form. Even though it's written out of order, it's in slope-intercept. So we know that slope is the item in front of the x. And in this case, I have a -3 in front of my x. So my slope is -3. This one is in point slope form, so you might not have that memorized, but remember we have a poster of that in the room, and you also have it on your formula chart, okay, which you will have on the state test as well. So our slope is what's in front of the parentheses here. So what's in front of the parentheses is 3/2. So that is our slope. 7, identify the point from the equation. And so some people are like, what do you mean? Well, you have to remember that this is in point slope form. So we have to figure out, what did I have to write here for that to happen? Well, y minus 4, y minus 4. Okay. M, x minus, hold on a minute, but that's not a minus. So what number did I have to put here to change it from a minus into a plus? Well, I had to put a negative number, because a negative and a negative gives us our positive, right? So that's how we work our formula. So this is my x, so our ordered pair is always x comma y. So we would have -6 comma 4. All right, so I'll say that again. You have to go back to the original formula, and the original formula has minus signs. So I wrote y minus, and then I put in a 4. And then x minus, but it's not a minus anymore. It's a plus. So I had to have altered it in order to turn that from a minus into a plus. All right, very good. This one, you guys all are really good at this. I just think you forget that you know what to do. Basically, this means move this into y equals mx plus b and locate the m. So short story, we need to solve for y. So if we're trying to solve for y, we'll look at addition and subtraction, right? I have a positive 3x minus 4y. So I need to get rid of this 3x. Right now this 3x is positive. I know it's positive because there's no minus sign in front of it. So we're going to subtract 3x on both sides, because positive 3x and minus 3x cancel. So we have -4y equals -3x plus 12. All right, now we divide. What's being multiplied times y? We're multiplying -4. So we're going to divide by -4. Cool, cool. -3 divided by -4. If you don't know, type that in, okay? -3 divided by -4. If you're not sure how to reduce, come on, calculator. Do your job. Wake up. Wake up. All right, -3 divided by -4. Positive 3 over 4. So this becomes 3 over 4x. And then 12 divided by -4. -3 or -3. So once we do that, all we have to do is figure out where the slope is. Well, here's the slope. It's what's in front of x. So 3/4. Okay, so this is a two-part question. You have to know to solve for y. Once you solve for y, it's just as easy as number 5. Okay, so you're good there. All right, moving on. All right, write the equation in slope-intercept form given a slope of 3 and a point of 4, -1. So this tells you how they want your final answer to be, and we have posters that say this, but to be honest, you can start it in point slope if you like it better and solve for y, or you can start in slope-intercept. It really doesn't matter. For the sake of this, I will do it in slope-intercept form from the beginning, even though I personally, as a mathematician, I prefer to use point-slope form. So I will show you both, should you care. Again, if you don't want to see both, fast forward. It's already a long video. That's fine. Okay, so slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. I need an m and a b and an x and y. So I have a slope, this is m, equals 3, and I have a point, so this is an x, and that's a y. The only thing I don't have is b, and I have to have b. So we're going to have to go solve for b. So where the y is supposed to exist, I'm going to put my y value of -1. Where the m is supposed to exist, I'm going to put my m. Where the x is supposed to exist, I'm going to put my x. And b is the only thing I don't need or I don't know, so it stays. This means multiply, 3 times 4. Okay, they're touching. 3 is touching that parentheses. So that means multiply. So 3 times 4 is 12. Okay. Now, just like we did on the first page, we want to get b by itself. That is a positive 12. So we are going to subtract 12. -1 minus 12 is -13. And you're like, yay, I'm done! Almost. I have to plug in an m and a b to have my final answer, because you notice all my answers have a y equals a number, x, and then another number. So I have to have those numbers. So y equals, here's my m, followed by my x, and then I'm supposed to put my b. It's supposed to be a plus b, right? But my b is negative, so it's going to be a minus b. Ta-da, ta-da, 3x minus 13. Okay. You can do that using point slope form if you want. So I will show you that here. I will answer this question, and then I'll show you the couple extra steps that would take me to get it into slope-intercept form. Okay, so you'll get to see that. All right, use point slope form, given a slope and a point. So point slope form is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Again, if you don't have that memorized, it's going to be on a poster and it's going to be on your formula chart. This one's a little bit different. In order to write my final piece, you notice I have to have a number in the y1 spot, I have to have a number in the m spot, and I have to have a number in the x1 spot. Okay. So in this case, here's our m equals -4. And instead of labeling this x and y, I'm going to label it x1, y1. Okay. Because that's where I need to put numbers. So I'm going to have y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So in this case, I wrote two negatives. The formula says minus, but my number is -4. So when we minus a negative, right, that is equivalent to adding a positive. It's the opposite of negative. The opposite of negative is positive. And to be honest, on this question, we're done. Like, I don't have to do anything else. So I just have to find the correct answer. This one. Okay. Now, I could do the same strategy on this above problem. I would have put in my x and my y here and my slope, and then I would just solve for y. So that would look like, hold on, let me find a piece of paper. Okay. I would distribute, so I would have -4 times x, and I would have -4 times +4. Okay. And then my goal is to get y by itself. So I would add 2. I'm going to bring it, over here with the 16 because it doesn't have an x. So I don't want it to go over there. I want it to go with its like partner. So y equals -4x, and -16 plus 2 is -14. So if this question had said slope-intercept form, my answer would look like this. Even though I started in point-slope form, I can still end in slope-intercept form if I want to. So that's what I'm saying up here, right? You can start in point-slope form and then solve for y. Okay, if that's confusing, ignore me. Don't worry about it. But for those of you who like that, there you go. All right. 11 and 12. Write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form given 2 points. All right. Slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. So I have to have an m and I have to have a b. Right now, I don't have either. All I have are 2 points. So I have 2 x's and I have 2 y's. Not super helpful. So I have to find slope first. Most of you have shown that you like to find slope from a table. There's a poster about this in the room as well. So I'm going to take my 2 ordered pairs and put them in a table. Now if I want to find slope, I need to find how do I get from 5 to negative 7. That's right, minus 12. And how do I get from 2 to 6? Add 4. The eternal question is, which number goes on top? Well, slope is our change in y, which is our rise, over our change in x, which is our run. And then we reduce. So negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. So my slope is negative 3. So I could go ahead and get rid of a and b because my slope is negative 3. Now I'm going to go right back here and I can do it this way, or I can do it this way and solve for y. Okay, I'll do it this way just to show you guys. So I'm going to pick one of these points that I like best. I'm going to choose that one. So I'm going to use that point and that slope to find b. So where the y is, I'm going to put 5 equals m x plus b. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. I want to get b by itself, so I'm going to add 6. So b equals 11. So now I have my m and I have my b. So my final answer, y equals m x plus b. Okay. Point slope form. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. And again, we have to have a slope, and we don't have one. So we have to go find our slope. So here's my points. 4, 5, 3, negative 5. How do I get from 5 to negative 5? Minus 10. How do I get from 4 to 3? Minus 1. Slope is my change in y's over my change in x's. Negative 10 divided by negative 1 is positive 10. All right, so I'm going to pick this point right here, and I'm going to use that slope, and I'm going to plug them in. So y minus my y value, 5, equals my slope, x minus my x value. I don't have any double negatives, so in this case, point slope form is done. Okay, I have nothing else I have to do. So I look and I see that one. Okay. Now it happened in class the other day where somebody chose the other point. Okay, so maybe look at your answers and see which numbers they chose so they use the correct point. All right. It is not hurtful. We could have used this point, right? But then we'd have like 8 answer choices. So that's silly. Okay. All right, here we go. 13. Write the equation of line represented in the table. All right, I'm going to show you, finally, for real, how I could start in point slope form. but end in slope-intercept form. All right, so this is a good opportunity for me to show you that. The first thing that I need is my slope. So from a table, I'm going to do this one because I don't have to start at the top. 1 to 3 is plus 2, and negative 2 to positive 2 is plus 4. Our slope is our change in y over our change in x, so our slope is 1/2. I'm going to choose one point, so I'm going to take this one. I'm going to use that point and this slope in here, and then I'm going to solve for y. So I'm going to have y minus 3 equals 1/2 x minus 2. If my answers had been in point slope form, I could stop. But my answers are in slope intercept form. They're solved for y. So I'm going to have to solve for y. So this is what I talked about earlier, and some of you might have been listening and been like, what is she talking about? This is what I mean. All right, so first I distribute 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times negative 2. Some of you are like, I have no idea. Cool, that's fine. So, all right, if you need a fraction, control divide. 1 over 2, so that's 1/2 times negative 2. Negative 1. And then I have y minus 3. All right, so then I add 3, and I add 3. So y equals 1/2 x plus 2, because negative 1 plus 3 is 2. Okay. So I could have done this on all of these problems. Okay. Just because it tells you slope-intercept form, that just means how it wants your final answer. You can start in slope-intercept or you can start in point slope. It doesn't matter. It's whatever you like. If you don't know what you like, go find the poster and do what the poster says so you don't have to be confused. Okay? But if you have a preference, you are allowed to use that preference. I was allowed to start in this form even though I ended in this form. Okay? But again, if you don't have a preference, if you don't know how to make that choice, just use one of the posters and do exactly what the problem says, and don't worry about it. Okay? You'll get there eventually. All right, write the equation of the line represented by the graph. On a graph, I am always going to use slope-intercept because I can see a slope with my eyeballs on a graph, and I can see an intercept with my eyeballs on a graph. So I'm always going to use slope-intercept form when I have a graph. Okay. So I always start when graphing, I start with the slope-intercept. So that's this one. I'm looking for B. I find my y-axis. I figure out where does my line touch the y-axis, and it touches right there. That is my B value. So that is at negative 2. All I need now is my slope. So we learned several times this year, and I know you learned it last year, how to find slopes. We need 2 points. I always pick the one on the left, and then we're going to do rise over run. So a rise is up or down. So if you go up, it's positive. If you go down, it's negative. That's where most of my students and the other Algebra 1 students are making mistakes. You forget that if you go down, it's negative. Okay? In this case, it's not going to be a problem because we're going to go up 2 units, and we're going to go over 1 unit. So my rise, I went up 2 over 1. And 2 over 1 is 2. All right. Find your intercept, find your slope, and I would use slope-intercept form every time if I was using a graph. All right. Mary bought 15 items total at the grocery store. She bought some produce and some snack foods. Write the equation that best represents the situation. All right, so I see a total, right? Typically, a total means equal to, right? She bought produce. I'm going to say P for produce. And is almost always a plus sign. Snack foods. So I'm going to write S. So however many produce pieces she bought and however many snack foods she bought a total of 15 of them. So she could have done, 10 and 5 or 11 and 4. I don't know, but however many pieces of produce and however many snack foods she bought a total of 15 items. Okay. So we didn't really have any slopes on this one. I didn't know if there was a cost per produce or a cost per snack. So don't make it super complicated when it doesn't need to be. All right, this one was very, very basic. All right, a total almost always means equal to that thing. And is a plus word. Okay. All right, that's it. All right, here we go. Here's the easy stuff. Which line is the y-axis? So, x-axis, y-axis. Ta-da! Fabulous. What is the equation of a vertical line that goes through the point 14 at negative 7? So over here, I'm going to make me a little cheat sheet. All right. All right, hoi vux. You can take a minute on your test and write that down. In fact, I would encourage you when you get your test to write that down. All right, in this case, it wants the equation of a vertical line that goes through that point. So I am looking for the x value. My x value is 14. So my equation is x equals 14. All right. Which of the following are perpendicular? So we know that perpendicular lines intersect, but perpendicular lines intersect specifically at 90 degrees. So that's what makes perpendicular lines special. So, 19. Which of the following correctly describes lines that are parallel? So do parallel lines intersect? No. Do parallel lines intersect? No. Do parallel lines not intersect? Yes. Do parallel lines intersect? No. Okay. Ba-dum-ba-dum. B. Which of the following is the correct equation of the line that is perpendicular to the y-axis and goes to that point? So here's what I usually do with my arms, but I'm going to use pens. So here's the y-axis. It goes up and down like this, right? Because we just named it up here. Here's the y-axis. All right, so here's my y-axis. I need something perpendicular to my y-axis. So what kind of line is this one? This line is horizontal. So I am doing hoi. All right. Now I'm looking for a y value so that I can make my equation. So which of those is y? Negative 3. All right. Take your time. I use my arms usually, like I said, but you can use pens, you can use pencils. You could come up here and do it like this with your pencil. Okay. All right. Which of the following is the correct equation that is parallel to the y-axis and goes through the point 211? So this is the y-axis. This is parallel to the y-axis. This new line is vertical. So we are using vux. So I am looking for an x value. And in my ordered pair, my x value is 2. The equation of that line is x equals 2. Okay. All right, 22 and 23, we are almost done. Which of the following lines would be perpendicular to that equation? And then this one says parallel. So I'm going to do the parallel one first. I'm actually going to come down here and do 23 first. What we learned about parallel lines is that they have the same slopes. Okay, they've got to. They rise and they run the exact same way. So if I'm here and I need a line that's parallel to this one. My new line has to have the same slope. So you know how we asked that question on like page 1? You have to be able to identify slope. This is why. You need to know that this is the slope, and then to be parallel to that slope needs to be exactly the same. So which of these equations has the exact same slope as that one? D, positive 5 is our slope. So that's why we asked you this question up here, right? And down here. You have to be able to identify slope so that we know how to interact with it when we're parallel or perpendicular. All right, which of the following would be perpendicular? So here's what we learned about perpendicular. They are opposite reciprocals. So what does that mean? Opposite means one is going to be positive and one is going to be negative, right? Because one's going up and one's going down, right? Usually they're maybe like this. So one's going uphill and one's going downhill. Okay. Reciprocals means their fractions are flipped. So let's say that one of them has a slope of 1/2. The other one will be flipped. And if one is positive, the other one's negative. So we have two things we have to think about. Opposite signs, flip your fraction. That's reciprocals. So if we look here, our slope is 5. In order to be perpendicular, our new slope would have to be the opposite sign of that. So that sign is positive, so our new slope needs to be negative. As a fraction, 5 is the same as 5 over 1. So if I take 5 over 1 and I flip it, it's 1 over 5. So I need a line that has that slope. Cool. All right, so the culmination of everything you've learned right here, all the things from this unit come down to these two questions. All right, for the most part anyways. Which of the following lines would be perpendicular to this line and they go through this point? So we're going to use our skills for finding parallel and perpendicular, and then we're also going to use our skill of writing the equation of a line and then solving for y. So we have lots of skills in this problem. In order to be perpendicular, my original slope is 3. So my new slope would have to be the opposite sign, so that's negative, and I'm going to have to flip it. So I have to make it a fraction first since it's not already a fraction, and then I have to flip it. So 1 over 3. So I have a slope, and I have a point. I'm going to use point slope form. Does this take you back to page 2? Yes, it does. Okay, so y minus my y value equals my m. I'm going to use my new slope. X minus my x value. Now, if it had written in point slope form, I could stop there, but it's not, so I need to solve for y. So step 1 is to distribute. So I have negative 1/3 x, and then I have negative 1/3 times negative 3. So negative 1 over 3 times negative 3, positive 1. That's nice. Plus 1. Then I have to add 6. I wrote too big up there. Sorry. So I have y equals negative 1/3 x, and 1 plus 6 is 7. So negative 1/3 x plus 7, that one right there. So you'll notice there's two answers that have negative 1/3 x. I could automatically get rid of those two, but now I'm down to these two. And the only way I find out is I have to actually do the math. Okay. All right, last one. which of the following lines would be parallel to this line and that go through a point? So to be parallel, I need to have the same slope. So my new slope would be exactly the same, -2. So I have a slope and I have a point. I'm going to use point slope form. If at any point you're on a test and you don't feel like you have enough room, you can ask for scratch paper. If you have your own paper, you can ask to use it and then get it out, and you'll just want to staple it to your test, right? So you can't take that home with you. But if you ever feel like you don't have room to do your work, like I kind of got scrunched here, you can ask for paper. Like, don't worry about it, or you can ask to get out your own paper. Okay, it happens sometimes. Okay, so y minus 8 equals -2, x minus 4. So y minus 8 equals 2x minus 8. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times -4 is -8. Add 8. So y equals 2x. Now, -8 and +8, that actually is going to give us, wait a minute, I lost my negative sign. That should be a +8. -2 times -4 is +8. See, it happens to me too. The difference is I usually catch it. Here's how I caught it. If that was -8 and that was +8, I would have to have a +0, or I would have nothing after my x's. And I noticed that all my answer choices have a number after my x, which means I made a mistake. So I went and I found it. -2 times -4 is +8. All right, and 8 plus 8 is 16. Don't forget my negative sign. Okay, see, boom, right there. It happens to the best of us. So there you go, guys. That is everything. It's a long video. You do not have to watch all of it. I mean, if you got to this point, you probably did watch all of it, so that's good for you. You know what you could do if you're really struggling is get a piece of blank paper and write down the question again, and then put this away, and on your blank paper, try to solve it, and then check your work, okay? And then write this question down on a piece of paper, do your work on that other piece of paper, get this out, check your work, okay? That is how you study for math. You guys are awesome. Feel free to come see us in tutoring. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.